Welcome to the Make Your Mark podcast. Hey everyone, I'm Mark Moyer, author of Win Again, speaker, career coach, and business advisor. And I help athletes, executives, and entrepreneurs reach their fullest potential. What you're going to be hearing in every single episode are conversations with athletes and other sports-related influencers. And we'll be offering you the insight that you need to succeed in life, including advice that will let you jump past your competition, whether it be for a great new job or taking your business to a much, much higher level. Make sure to connect with me on social media at Mark Moyer Coach and go to my website, markmoyer.com, to get access to the tips and strategies that my coaching clients get directly. If you're looking for ways to make your mark, send me an email to mark@markmoyer.com and I'll get you going right away. Thanks for joining me today. It's going to be an awesome episode. Now, are you ready to make your mark? Let's do this. Hey everyone, welcome to the Make Your Mark podcast from wherever the heck you're listening to this, whether it's United States, Canada, Mexico, the Arctic Circle, Asia, Europe, Antarctica, etc. Wherever you're listening, you're going to love this episode. I mean, I'm just so excited to have Kim Cayce on my podcast and on this. I mean, she's such a wonderful woman. She's done so many things. She's been a professional golfer. She's run 5 businesses, and the new one she's got is amazing. Wait till you hear about her new business. I don't want to give that away yet. But she's funny, smart, ambitious, engaging. You're going to love this podcast. You really are. So before we get started, though, I want to make sure that you check out this podcast on iTunes, click on that subscribe button, or wherever you listen to your podcasts, subscribe, get involved, leave a review, send me an email, mark@markmoyer.com. I'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback on not just this podcast, but all of them, all the episodes. But you're going to love this one. Kim is a dynamo. She's great. She's funny. All right. I can go on, and I won't. So here's Kim. And this is how she's making her mark on the Make Your Mark podcast. Enjoy. You're going to love it. Well, I'd love to welcome to the Make Your Mark podcast, Kim Cayce. And say hello, Kim.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fabulous. And how are you doing?
I'm great, thanks.
Excellent. Well, just a real quick story. I met Kim at it was the Ogden Leadership Academy. It was held in Las Vegas a couple of months ago. And it was basically a pretty strong and very intense, I guess we could say, networking opportunity. It was 2 solid days of some great presentations, but also some separate groups that would meet and chat. And it was just a great opportunity to get to know people. And I had the opportunity to sit down with Kim and listen to a little bit of her background and her story, which is really amazing. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But also just to hear what her vision is going forward and all the things that she's got teed up that I think are going to be absolutely amazing. So just that quick little introduction as to how we met. But many of you may or may not know Kim's story. But for those of you that don't, Kim actually started a ways back as a very successful athlete. And I don't want to ruin the surprise. So Kim, tell me a little bit about how you got started and maybe what sports you were playing and then what it developed into.
Sure. Thanks for that nice intro. So I grew up as a competitive athlete. I played a bunch of sports, but I really excelled at golf. And I wound up going to Duke University on a full athletic scholarship. And then after college, after I graduated, I was lucky to play on tours around the world for 5 years. So Europe, Asia, Australia, some developmental tours in the US. I went to Q school a few times and really kickstarted my career in sports that way.
So how'd you get involved in golf in the first place?
My dad was a golf pro. So
yeah?
I kind of grew up bumming around the country club, playing tennis and golf and swimming. And I just really gravitated to golf. I loved it. It's a great sport to be able to play. So,
well, it really is. And, I joke with people about how I like to play, which is really not how most people should play because unfortunately I have a tendency to just as they say, grip it and rip it, right? Just to get up there and pretty much swing as hard as I can, which breaks about 47 rules of how to swing a golf club. But I kind of carry that in from my playing hockey and softball, where you try to crush it all the time. And so it has mixed results, because it's, I like to tell people I like to be one with nature. And in other words, going into the woods a lot, looking for my ball, or into the water looking for my ball, is usually the way I like to play golf. So I'm guessing you're not as much like that. You like to keep it sort of down the middle.
I try to, but I do share that love of nature. So being out on the golf course, away from the hustle and bustle of the everyday world, is a great way to kind of escape and relax and work on being in the present, and also playing a really fun sport.
It is. It's funny though, when people say, oh yeah, I played a round of golf today with so-and-so, and it was like a business round of golf. And I'm thinking, I've done those, and I can never get to the business part, because I'm always either laughing at the other person's shot, laughing at my own shot, or swearing at each other's shots, or something involving the game. And I can never find time to stop and say, well, wait, I got like a minute and a half. Let's talk about this. I feel like I focus on the game, but I guess other people are able to distance themselves from the game. But I guess maybe I'm too much of a competitor. I don't know. But I'm assuming you still play, or what's it like now?
After I retired from my career as a golfer, I started a few companies over the years. So golf, I still play. I do a lot more top golf these days than I do golf course golf. And that's a good thing, because it really works with my lifestyle today. Golf, it takes up a lot of time. So
it does, yeah.
I don't have that luxury these days, unfortunately, but I still play. Well,
so tell me a little bit about the transition. Like when you decided to retire from golf, did you already have some things teed up, or were you sort of like, all right, well, I'm done with the game, but what do I do next? Like how'd that transition time go?
Oh, that's a great question. Boy, that was one of the hardest, I think, moments of my life. I retired when I was 27, 28, and I had spent already 20 years developing my career as an athlete, never imagining that there would be a life after that. So it was a really tough transition for me, because I had to kind of reimagine my future and reinvent myself, and had endless options open to me, which was really nice. And trying to pick the right one was a challenge. And I wound up getting started with a startup. I had a few partners, and we started a finance company. And I was just along for the ride, thinking that I'd do it kind of part-time while I tried to figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up, and wound up building a very successful company for a number of years. And that was kind of my first adventure in entrepreneurship and startup world.
And then it took off from there, or it's continuing to take off, I'm assuming. But mixed in there, I know, we sort of joked about this, and some people like to talk about it, some don't, but you were, I believe, on national TV for something other than golf. Tell us about that.
Sure. So the second company I started was a women's athletic apparel company. After a number of years in finance, I really wanted to get back to my athletic roots, and I wanted to get back into kind of the sports and entertainment world. And I went back to graduate school, got my MBA, and started a women's athletic apparel company. And I did that right about the time that a TV show called Shark Tank was starting. So I was actually on the very first season of Shark Tank many years ago, and was like on the third or fourth episode pitching my apparel business.
And since everybody has such a lofty feeling about how that goes, but sometimes it's maybe not as smooth, but how was your experience with it?
My experience was the exact opposite of smooth. It probably was like the worst case scenario for me. I did not get a deal from the Sharks on the show. They thought the company was really too early stage, and they just felt like it was too risky given how early we were in our development. And so not only did I not get a deal, but it was just a very, emotional experience. So I feel like I I probably wish I could have a do-over or mulligan to borrow a golf term from the episode. If anyone's seen it, I actually kind of got a little teary at the end. So not only did I not get a deal from the Sharks, I also have the dubious distinction of crying on national television.
You know what's interesting is that, I've seen many, many episodes, and I'll often see that the tears can be effective. Not that they're, not that it's a planned on, weapon, but it was, but it's not a terrible thing. And look, I can imagine it's, you're being filmed and you're in front of these 5 incredibly, successful and influential potential investors, and it's, the lights are on and all the pressure's on, and then, but you're all excited, you're amped up, you're convinced that your product is a home run. And then you've got these 5 people saying, no, go back to the drawing board, or, hit the snooze button and let us know what's going on a few years from now or next year or something. So I'm sure, so from that, do you feel like you got any sort of constructive criticism, or was it just a giant waste of time? What was it like?
Oh, no, it wasn't a waste of time. I mean, it was incredibly valuable. It really, I think, inspired me and my whole team to keep going and really kind of, make it happen. So, which we did, even though we didn't get a deal on the show, we raised enough money through venture capital and angel funds to launch the company. We grew it for a number of years and then sold it in 2012. So we had, a fairly successful exit, even though our start was a little bit bumpy.
But did the appearance on the show help with those future investors, or not necessarily?
Yeah, I think when investors heard that we were going to be on the show, they don't shoot the show, like it doesn't air the same night you film it. So there was a little bit of lag time between when we filmed the episode and it actually went to air. And that gave us a chance to go back to a lot of the investors who'd been talking to us over the past year or so before, and let them know that we were going to be on this new show and it was going to get a lot of publicity, and that ABC was really excited about the idea, and that kind of helped generate a little more interest. For any entrepreneurs that are listening, I think having a kind of a hot offer or having some traction and some interest from other people really helps speed things along when you're trying to raise money.
Well, you're absolutely right. In fact, one of the entities I've been speaking to is a fairly new professional league, and I was speaking to the commissioner, and she was saying that there was one financial services company that's offering to, potentially provide the players with sort of, financial advice and insurance advice, et cetera, in exchange for potential sponsorship. But they're sort of kind of sitting on their hands a little bit, and it's frustrating to her. And I said, well, I know some people at another competing, financial services firm. And I said, you want me to stir them up? She said, absolutely. I'd love it. Stick it to these guys, kind of thing. And it's true. When you have the opportunity to use something as leverage, obviously that can only help your potential business. And obviously you found that, and it's great to be able to say, well, look, I'm appearing on, or I will be on this show, even though you've already gone through the filming and know they didn't invest. Did you, those people didn't know that, right? Or need to know that, I guess.
Yeah, I think it kind of changed my approach to raising money for a startup. Where initially we had gone in and presented our idea and our concept and gave them a lot of facts. And, we're very, I think, gracious and accommodating in our pitch. When we went back the second time, we had a little more, maybe swagger is a good word to use. We were going to be on a national television show. We had a lot of great PR and press coming out. We did have interest from more investors at the time. So we kind of, like you said, had a little bit more competition going on, and the round was closing, where the round was going nowhere. Before we shot that episode, suddenly we had more interest than we did availability, and that scarcity really helped get people to take action more quickly than they had in the past.
Oh, that's great, because that can only
I mean, it's all about increasing interest, increasing engagement, and getting the product in front of the right set of eyes. Because once it's there, then hopefully the sky's the limit anyway. So I'm glad you were able to take that and, as you said, leverage it into eventually a fairly strong exit. So that's wonderful. So that was back in 12 when you were out of that. But give me a little sense of what you've been up to sort of the last couple of years, and then we're going to jump into your current venture, which I'm a huge fan of. But what have you been up to for the previous few years?
Yeah, so I had, selling your company, selling your startup after you've worked on it for a number of years is a little bit similar to the experience of transitioning from being an athlete to kind of coming back into the real world. It's another transition and having to reinvent yourself yet again. I got really lucky after we exited that I was recruited by another sporting goods company that was launching here in the US. So I went from LA to Chicago and helped launch a brand called Li Ning in the US. And while I was there, we worked really hard with our team to sign the company signed Dwayne Wade, who is a basketball player. I think he just signed a really big deal with them. So they're still around. And that was super exciting. And I did that for a little over a year. And then went on to work for a series of other startup companies. Took a year off to teach entrepreneurship at American University and traveled to teach in Asia, Pakistan. And then decided I kind of had, you get an idea. It takes a little while to come up with your next idea as an entrepreneur. And I think it took me a few years to really kind of focus in on something I wanted to pursue. And about a year and a half ago, while I was teaching, I saw a need in the marketplace and have been working to turn that into a new company.
And we're going to jump into that in a second. It's because, there are, something that I've found is that when people really jump into something they just absolutely love doing, it's really infectious. It really, it surrounds everybody that you're associated with. But then, when people see how amped up and excited you are, they want to be a part of that. And especially if they, you have a little bit of a reputation behind you, but you've got that energy and that enthusiasm. And without a doubt, I know that you're carrying all of that. So I won't ruin the surprise. I'll let you do it. But tell me about your the current venture and how you plan on running with it.
I will. But before I do, Mark, I'm going to just follow up on what you said, because I think it's really true. Sometimes it's not so easy to come up with that great idea. And it took me a few years after we sold Cayce, my sportswear company, to really kind of find my next thing. And I loved consulting for other startups. And I got to work with a number, probably 25, 30 different entrepreneurs and their startups as a consultant and advisor. And it gave me a really interesting perspective on what it means to be an entrepreneur. And a lot of times for a few years, I was really frustrated because I didn't have like a big idea of my own. And then through my experiences of working as a consultant, working with lots of different entrepreneurs, hearing their stories, hearing how they were trying to change the world, I kind of just happened upon this idea for a company that is called Verbatim. And the idea behind the company, for a long time, I wanted to write a book about my experiences as a startup entrepreneur. And I thought it would be super easy, and it wasn't. I sat down to try and write my book about a year and a half ago, and it was just a disaster. I was overwhelmed. I couldn't get past like the first couple sentences. And I thought, my God, there has to be a better way. And so through working with a few other editors and writers and PR people that I know, we kind of came up with a new way to take your experiences and expertise and turn them into a book in about 6 months with doing very little writing. So it's kind of a really new, cool way to create books and to share expertise with the world.
And
the more I speak to people about Verbatim, I find that it's something that's absolutely needed, because most people that have, especially a business book inside of their head, something that they can really get out that's an important message for everyone to hear, they just simply don't have the time to get that into any sort of a book format, or oftentimes into any format other than maybe delivering a speech to the people they work with and for, and that sort of thing. But to get it out to everybody is such a challenge. And that's what really makes Verbatim such a great idea and a venture, is that it's a vehicle for somebody who's just absolutely swamped with time. Like for me, and we joked about this already, but where the hell was Verbatim last year? Damn it. Because I spent, equivalent of hundreds of hours, I guess, between writing all the content and putting together the content that I really sort of mapped out over my career as a career and business coach. I've really pulled it all together, but it just took a lot of time, just the intricacies of not just the writing, but then the editing and the formatting. And then it's funny, I tell people when I self-published, and I didn't realize it. I say, look, I thought that if I finished writing my book, the writing part was like climbing Mount Everest. But the problem was then the clouds cleared, and I was like, oh crap, I'm only halfway up Mount Everest, because the other half is all the book, the cover art, the marketing copy, what do you say to Amazon? What do you do? All these different elements that an author, just a first-time author especially, doesn't realize goes into the actual book, including the legal language in the front and the little logo on the back bottom right and the ISBN number and all these things that now I know, but it just took so long, and not just the time, but obviously an investment, and it was costly and it was a lot. I mean, looking back, it would have been such a great help to have Verbatim around. So, I mean, I can't encourage people enough to reach out to Kim about Verbatim, because it's a life changer. It's really a huge help.
Oh,
let it out.
Thank you for the kind words. And I will say you did a great job with your book. I think Win Again is really fantastic, and it is just so full of valuable information. I really enjoyed reading it, and have used it as a reference several times since I first read it. So you did a great job. But your problem is exactly the one we set out to solve. As I was consulting with different entrepreneurs and helping them build their companies, and also building their personal brands and helping them to establish some expertise and authority in the world. The pinnacle of building an authority brand is really to write a book and to share that expertise with the world, and to enjoy all the benefits that still come with being a published author. But to do so, you just either have to clone yourself so that there's two of you so that you can do your day job and write the book, or just spend a lot of time and overwhelm and take a lot of precious time away from your business while you're trying to write the book. And we really wanted to make an easier, more simple way for experts to share that knowledge and expertise with the world, and to enjoy the benefits of becoming a published author and some of the publicity and opportunity that come with that. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm really excited about this. And we've got, I think, 5 or 6 authors under contract now. So we not only help them create their book and publish it, but we also have a marketing, sales, and distribution team set up so that we can sell the book and get you a lot of PR and speaking opportunities, and so that you really kind of enjoy those benefits and share your story with the world. So yeah, I can't wait until we launch and go live.
Well, and that's just about to happen. But listen, one thing I want to kind of reiterate, and it's part of, I guess, a lot of the coaching that I do, is I like to try to always look at things from the potential consumer or customer's client's perspective. And I think to myself, last year, before I started the writing process, if I'd known about this, I think, there's a few different ways that the investment falls into play. I think initially people will look at the amount that it might cost and say, oh my gosh, X $1,000, whatever the amount is, that's such a big amount. But,
what I'll say is, from my perspective, if I'd known that that amount would cover all the amount that I certainly spent almost that amount anyway on just the editor and the getting it self-published and the materials and everything else. But then on top of that, there's no way to really calculate again, if it was 200, 300 hours that I spent collectively on the whole process. Well, the amount of money I would have earned if I'd been using that time to build my business instead of writing the book, that right there it's almost double the amount of the investment. And then even third is there's no way to put a price on ease of mind or the weight off the shoulders kind of a thing. The notion that I could, basically spend my day doing my job and knowing that behind the scenes there's somebody not only putting together my book and using it in my words, which is, from what I understand, the meaning of verbatim, right?
Yes, in your
of course,
word for word. Yes,
word for word. But then on top of that, doing all the legwork behind the scenes and sort of getting it out there and marketing. And look, at the end of the day, you could earn 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, et cetera, $1,000 in just and way, way more than that in the opportunities that a book will unearth or open up for you that you never had without one. So this is really, quite frankly, almost a no-brainer for anybody who's been in any sort of a business type environment that has either a product or a service or something that they're passionate about, and they happen to feel that they've got a unique stance on it. This is a no-brainer, right? It's the best way to get it out.
Yeah, that's it. Exactly. It's the best way to get it done. We kind of like to say, stop dreaming and start doing it. And we've built a team to help kind of tackle all of these different aspects. We've got interviewers and editors to help get the ideas and stories out of your head and into a professionally published book. We've got publishing experts to help take care of the publication, the design and publication of the book itself. And then we've got a sales, marketing, and PR team that handles not only distribution, both online and in traditional bricks and mortar stores, but executes a pretty powerful public relations campaign, which is some of the reasons why people write a book. I think we found through our research on Verbatim that the average self-published author maybe sells less than 100 books. So even though there's a lot of technology and tools out there that have made it easier than ever for someone to write a book themselves, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's easy to do or that it's the best use of someone's time. So we really help coach you through the process, walk you through that. We created 8 steps to our process, kind of an 8-step system. And that system is incredibly effective at turning your expertise and knowledge into a book that's highly marketable.
That's brilliant. That's awesome. And, the whole thing with Verbatim is that it's really it's like a launching point. It's a whole, I think a lot of people, they have their own businesses and they're plugging along and doing what they're doing, but without realizing that having a book out there can take them in a whole new direction. And even if it's a right turn or a semi-right turn, but a direction that could absolutely and dramatically increase how they do business and how much they end up not just earning, but the kind of impact that they can make. Because again, without the book, they're only impacting the people they're directly dealing with. But a book opens things up. Suddenly you're being read, not just nationally, but internationally. And it's opening up a whole bunch of new opportunities.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, did you find that after you published your book that you had new opportunities and new, how did your life change?
Well, in fact, just before we're recording this, I got a call from a gentleman who had received a copy of my book, and he was leafing through the table of contents, and he said, I've got this company of salespeople and sales managers, and in reading through how you talk about in your book, when again even though it's written from the athlete's perspective, for the athlete's perspective, it's really advice that's meant for anybody. And he said, honestly, there's so many elements of the advice there that
can really help our sales team really grow dramatically. And he asked me to come speak at, they have a conference in a couple of months, and he wants me to come speak and train his sales team to in turn pass the word on to all their salespeople. And that would have never happened if I didn't have the book. So you're absolutely right. That's just one of many examples, but it literally just happened moments before we started this call. So, yeah, it's great. And it's also, I have to tell you, there's something really super cool about holding a book in your hand and saying, holy crap, I wrote this thing. It's unbelievable. I read somewhere, I think it was maybe the New York Times website or something, it said that even though it seems like there's a lot of authors out there, it's something like 0.04% of all people in the business community have written a book. I mean, it's some minuscule little number. And I can see why. It's a tremendous amount of effort. But I think with a company like Verbatim, it's something that can be open to a lot more people.
Yeah, you nailed it. That's exactly, for every person that writes a book, there's probably 100 that have an idea for a book, especially nonfiction, especially, just sharing expertise and business advice. And we wanted to help those people either find the time to get the book completed or to organize their thoughts in a way that helps facilitate the book. So that's exactly the idea behind the company, and we're seeing that over and over again with the authors we're working with right now. Like as with you, they're seeing new opportunities, and they have a new sense of confidence about their business. And I think the book writing process also helps you think about your business a little differently. Just like creating a business plan. I think as an entrepreneur, I really have applied a lot of the lessons I've learned as an entrepreneur to the book creation process. So, if you've ever heard of the lean startup methodology, we've tried to apply some of that to the book writing process to try and streamline it and help people get better finished product more quickly.
Well, you played right into my hands because you mentioned lessons learned as an entrepreneur. And really what I want to ask you now is look, you've done this now. I think this is your fifth entity you've really started to grow, right? Is it your fifth business?
Yeah, I think it is.
That's crazy. But what kind of, I'd love to hear some advice that maybe you could give some people out there who are, and I'm going to play up my term here, looking to make their mark. It's all about, how can someone take, an idea and, what kind of advice do you give people that have this idea of something that they want to bring to market, or they want to, whether it's a product or a service? What are some of the tips you can give people that have that in their mind and they're just not sure what to do next?
Yeah, that's great. I think one of the first things is you have to know if you have an idea or a business. So I always like to start out when I work with entrepreneurs, asking them what their goals and objectives are. And I think the first time you and I talked and I told you about Verbatim, you asked me that, you got really specific with me and you wanted to know, like, how much money do you want to make? How many customers do you want to serve? What are your goals? But tie those goals to some numbers and see if it's something that is really viable, that you can, I think what differentiates a hobby or a side hustle from a career and a business and a company that can grow and scale is whether or not the economics work. So starting out and creating a plan and using goals and objectives and financials to evaluate the plan is really important.
Good. What other, a couple of things to throw in there. I think it's really important to surround yourself with, whether it's a really strong team, and the team doesn't necessarily mean you need to go out and hire a bunch of people, but it can mean simply having friends or family and people that that say, wow, that's a great idea, and we're behind you, and if there's anything we can do to help, kind of a thing. But other people to sort of support you to an extent. And then also
again, what I talk about all the time with everybody is always put yourself in the other person's perspective, the other person's shoes, and think to yourself, if I was looking at this product or this service, what would compel me to reach into my wallet and give that person money for that product or service? What would compel me to want to be involved with it? And really try to look at it from that perspective, because I find that most people, what they do is they, I tell people all the time, don't sell yourself, don't sell, but instead always allow yourself to be bought. Always try to figure out, well, what is it that's going to make that person have that buying decision that's going to make them want to, again, invest in you and what you're doing versus, the other way around. So in this case with Verbatim, it's the same sort of thing where it's just so important to think, well, how am I going to make this person's life that much better? Well, you are, because you're going to give them the opportunity to create a book that they can then run with their business. And it's something that you're going to be involved with doing virtually everything for. And, that's how you're looking at it from your potential client's perspective. And I think that's brilliant.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, that's what, we love what we do. I think with Verbatim, we're helping people really achieve their dreams and share their experience with the world. So in the process of creating books and telling stories and sharing advice, I think is just, for me, it's something I'm so incredibly passionate about, and helping other people grow and broaden their horizons is just so very fulfilling. And I think that's what you're saying about the team around you for entrepreneurs and startup is so important, to have a good team. And I think not just a team, but to have like coaches and advisors, really, even if you're the entrepreneur and you're the founder and the CEO of a startup, you still have to have people to help hold you accountable. And having coaches and advisors who can do that, I think, is so important and a really critical component to success as you get a company started and growing, and knowing you have to have people to report to and discuss your progress with in very frank and honest terms is a really valuable.
Well, wait a second. You said you thought it's a good idea for people to have coaches and advisors. I couldn't agree with you more. Strangely enough, but no. Look, it's something that it's funny going back. I remember back when I was an executive recruiter many years ago. I was, I give people advice on how to. Back then, it was all about how to interview, how to do well in your job interview, so that you're the one getting the offer. And I used to give people advice on, the right questions to ask and how to answer certain things and so forth. And one day, I'll never forget this. I was giving advice to an attorney, and she was like, everybody else is usually like, wow, that's great advice. I can't wait to use it. And they use it and they do well. That's wonderful. This woman was just battling me on every single thing. Like, she was just like, I don't know how that would work. I don't see how it was. I'll never forget her. But because, I am who I am, I asked her at the end, I said, well, obviously, I hope you run with some of this advice, but I'm not sure you will. But, let me ask you a question. Do you think that would I be qualified to give you legal advice? Should I be talking to you about, the right things to say legally? And she goes, no, of course not. You're not a lawyer. And I said, exactly. So you shouldn't be giving me advice on the whole career thing. And that shut her up pretty quickly. But, it's something where when everybody out there, in my opinion, has expertise. It doesn't matter what you do for a living or how old or young you are. You have your own life experience. You've done things that other people haven't. And if you happen to be a super high-end financial specialist or an attorney, or you happen to be someone who cuts down trees, or you work on plumbing, or whatever it is you do that you have expertise at, there's 99% of people out there don't have that. And I tell people all the time, you can be the person that steps forward and shares that expertise in a way that can really make you much more successful, right? So if I'm the guy cutting down a tree, well, me personally, I don't necessarily know where you put the first cut and how far you put it and how deep you do it to make sure that the tree doesn't fall on my head versus somewhere else, whatever it is. But I know that that person doing it, the tree surgeon, they know what they're doing. And I would pay for that expertise to some extent. So to me, almost anybody can come forward. And I know I'm doing a lot of pitching for Verbatim, but honestly, anybody with an expertise can come forward and create a book about it. I mean, can you imagine if I could, I'm sure there's some of those out there at Home Depot, et cetera, but the idea of walking up somewhere and finding a book that says, here are the 26 things to make sure you do if you want to cut down your own tree. I'd be like, sweet, this is great. And it's all about sharing that expertise out there regardless of what you do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's, I'm just laughing at the idea of creating this book for cutting down trees.
Yeah, don't steal that. That's my idea. I'm going to write.
I think it's going to be a bestseller. It's going to be a bestseller. Yeah, great entrepreneurs surround themselves with teams of experts. I think for me personally, the best advice I've gotten from one of my mentors over the years was to surround yourself with people that were smarter than you. And that's one of the things that I've tried to do in starting this company. I'm not great at any one particular thing, but I'm really good at building a team of experts and understanding what's needed to complete that team so that all these different facets of our business are covered. To go back to where we started with my experience as a golfer, a lot of people think golf is about hitting the ball really hard or swinging really fast, or, they think it's one thing, going to the driving range and just swatting drivers all day long. But the thing that makes golf such a surprisingly complicated sport is that there's so many different facets to the game. You have to be great off the tee to hit it down the middle. You've got to be great at the iron game. You've got to be good at your short game and putting and chipping and sand shots. And you have to practice all these different things and then be able to bring it all together during a tournament. And running a business is a little bit like that. There's a lot of different parts to a startup and a business that you need to master or have skills at, and bringing together a group of people that have those skills makes, I think, a company grow really quickly and delivers a great product in the end. So,
well, that was a perfect analogy. That was really ideal because, I think that especially when you're running a business and, you have the same mentality as you do as an athlete, where you're really, as an athlete, you're extremely competitive and you really want to be so successful and really sort of perform at the top of your game all the time. And that's the kind of energy and the competitiveness that you want to bring into whatever entrepreneurship type of venture you've got going. And clearly, Kim, you bring that energy that you used, I'm sure, quite a bit on the golf course back when you're playing into running these businesses, and especially Verbatim. And, honestly, it's really been great to hear not just your story, but I think you're really a positive and great role model for other people out there that just, they're not sure what to do. Maybe once they've competed and now they're transitioning out, and many of them are sort of left wondering, gee, I've got this competitive spirit. I've got this energy. I've got all this stuff that I can bring to the table, but I'm not sure how to do it. And I think, if they hear your story, they'll be inspired because they'll say, wow, here she was, she played golf, and now she wasn't necessarily sure what would happen after the game, but she managed to partner up with some people, started the finance company. From there, started her sports apparel company, and it's just grown from there. And, I think this is a great story for everyone to really listen to and run with. So I really appreciate you sharing with us today.
Hey, thanks. It's been my pleasure. And, for those athletes out there that are in that situation you just described, I think you've got to kind of go back to your roots a little bit, to your point of talking about coaches and advisors. You got to remember what made you great as an athlete. And I don't know really any athletes that do it all on their own. Everyone's got coaches, and as a golfer, I had a caddy, and I had coaches for my game, coaches for my mental game. We had publicists and agents, and kind of building that whole team around you as you go off into your next career, or whether that's a job at looking for another company or starting your own business. Having that team around you to help you, kind of live your best life and bring out the best within you is so important and so critical to success.
Perfectly stated. Kim, thanks so much for being on the Make Your Mark podcast. And, it's been wonderful to hear how you've not only been making your mark, but you're continuing to make your mark going forward, and especially placing a large imprint. And I think it's going to be a much bigger one in the publishing world. And, I'm thrilled to have spoken with you, and really thanks so much for being on here, and can't wait to see how Verbatim grows and jumps forward.
Thanks, Mark, and thanks for all the great advice and help you've given me over the last few months. It's been wonderful working with you as a coach and advisor. So thanks for letting me be on the show.
Oh, my pleasure. All right, have a great rest of your day.
Thanks so much for joining us today on this episode of Make Your Mark podcast. The goal of the podcast is to help you find ways to make your mark, to succeed in life, and to jump past your competition. Be sure to leave me a review on iTunes and Stitcher, and subscribe to be the first to hear new episodes. If you're looking for ways to make your mark, send me an email, mark@markmoyer.com, and I'll get back to you right away. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.